Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for this invitation. I haven't understood what he said, but I heard that it was about me because he said Tarik Ramadan lots of time. So I think it was an introduction. What I'm going to do this evening is to share with you some views. Is that okay with the translation? Everything is fine? You get everything? Okay. So what I'm going to share with you is some ideas about being a Muslim, thinking, promoting critical thinking, and understanding our role in today's world, and in which way we have to be committed, and in which way we have to propose. So I will start with a short introduction with three main points, and then come to an understanding of the Islamic teachings from within, an overall understanding for Muslims living in Muslim majority countries or living in the West or in the East, wherever they are. And then the second part will be about our role and our duty and our responsibility in the world today in our respective societies. For you living in Moscow or living in Russia or living in this society, the most important thing is to understand that not only it's important to be and to remain a Muslim, but it's also very important to understand our contribution to the world today. What is our contribution? My main concern today is to stop with the victim mentality, to stop with the idea that the people don't like Muslims and they don't like Islam, so we are the victims of the world, of the contemporary world, be it in Russia or in the States or in the West or in the Middle East, and then we blame the world and we avoid critical thinking. Because the first to be blamed today as to the situation of Muslims are the Muslims themselves. We are the first to blame. We are the first that we are not providing and not doing what we have to do. It's not the world that we have to blame, it's us that we have to come to this critical thinking from within and to understand what is our role. Still okay with the translation? I'm not going too fast? Louder for the translation or for you? Because I can't move this up. So maybe you have to put the mic louder. Is it possible? Because there is only one other thing that I can do, it's this. But more than that I can't. Is that okay? Okay. So it's good to be creative in Russia. Okay, let us start with the introduction, three main points. And in fact, there will be four. I'm just adding one now, which I think it's important when it comes to Islam. I have our sister Zainab who came all the way from St. Petersburg, and she translated my last book, which is a contemporary introduction to Islam. It's going to be in Russian language very soon, inshallah. And in this book, in Introduction to Islam, and it's called Islam the Essentials, I started by doing something which I think it's very important for all of us, Muslims and people of other faith. Get me right, from the very beginning, I said Muslims and people of other faith and with no faith. I'm not saying Muslims and non-Muslims. As Muslims, we have to stop defining the people around us as non-Muslims. We are not the center of the world. You wouldn't like to be called non-Christians or not Jews. You like to be called Muslims because you are Muslims. When we speak about people of other faiths and with no faith, call them from where they are, not from where you look at them. The starting point of respect is not to be the center and say Muslims and non-Muslims. No, Muslims And you are a Christian, you are a Jew, you are an atheist, you are an agnostic. This is the way the Prophet, peace be upon him, was. He was respecting the people by the way he was calling them, by the way he was defining them, by the way they were. They liked to be called. So you are not, don't give me a definition which is a negative definition of who I am. Because I'm not you, so I'm not a Muslim. No, I'm a Christian, or I'm a Jew, or whatever. This, the starting point is to be very cautious with the words that we are using. The starting point of critical thinking, mind your words. Mind the way you talk to people, or about people, from where you are. This is one. The second, it's also to get it right. Very often, when it comes to Islam, we define Islam as submission. And in fact, it's a wrong definition. For anyone who knows Arabic, Islam doesn't mean submission in English. I don't know what is the word in Russian, but submission is not the right understanding. If you come to the Quran, you have a very interesting verse saying, "Idkhulu fi silmi kaffa." Enter in God's peace with all your being and your heart. In fact, Islam is to enter in God's peace. It's not a submission without will, it's a surrender with your mind, with your heart, to get peace, not to forget your humanity or to lose your humanity. When you speak about submission, there is something negative in submission. There is something very positive in entering into God's peace, which is completely different. Islam is get this peace with your relationship with God and with yourself, which is not the negative understanding of submission by being less than a human being. Not at all. It's to get more than humanity with this inner peace, which is the spiritual elevation that we are talking about. You get this? From the very beginning, with two words, Islam and Muslims and people of other faiths, we start our critical thinking, our critical journey within Islam, which is, and within our tradition, which is the essential here. So this is the first point of my introduction. Second, it's everything in Islam has to do with two main concepts, which has to do with critical thinking. And we need this. We need this everywhere. The first has to do with knowledge. And we know this, that the very start of Islam has to do with بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق. Read in the name of your Lord who created. And in this verse we understand that the starting point of believing in God is no faith without knowledge. اقرأ باسم ربك, it's faith in God means no. No, read. And read, when you read a book, is it possible for you to read a book without getting something which is pure knowledge, without understanding? Knowledge, ilm, has to do with fahm, knowledge with understanding. Not only you have to read the Quran, but you have to understand the Quran. So it's knowledge plus understanding. This is the starting point of faith. When God called the Prophet, peace be upon him, as he called Jesus, as he called Moses, peace be upon them all, that was about come to God not without knowledge, but with your humanity plus knowledge plus understand. Get the right understanding of your presence in the world, and that's essential. So anyone who is telling you faith has to do with belief without knowledge is not getting it. And as we have it in the Quran, in Ibn Kathir, so it's the right time to drink. Bismillah. Is that okay? The translation is still okay? But I have a sound here. But the sound. Okay, so اقرأ means read, and read means understand. From the very beginning in Surah Al-Baqarah, Ibn Kathir, the one who is commenting the Quran, one of the great scholars of Islam, was saying, there is a word in the Quran, a verse in the Quran saying, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. We give dignity to human beings, not only to Muslims, human beings. Bani Adam, the sons of Adam, all humanity, all the people. By definition, we are dignified beings. What is this dignity? Karama, dignity. It's based on two things. The first has to do with knowledge. Because you have in the Quran, عَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. God taught all the names, meaning he gave knowledge to the sons of Adam, meaning men and women. And then second, with this knowledge, there is a second feature that is explaining our dignity, is freedom. That وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيُؤْمِنْ وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيَكْفُرْ. The one who wants can believe, and the one who wants can disbelieve or reject, deny. That's our freedom. Because of these two features, we are dignified human beings. Knowledge and freedom. That's essential with critical thinking. There is no critical thinking if there is no freedom. No critical thinking if there is no knowledge. And by the way, when there is no knowledge, it cannot be a way to question, because ignorance and critical thinking don't go together. Having said this, an understanding that the beginning of Islam has to do with knowledge and understanding and freedom to question. One of our brothers who converted to Islam, an American brother, was saying, you know, the problem with Muslims is that we end up repeating and not questioning. And he wrote a book saying, even the angels ask. Because in the Quran, the angels are talking to God. أَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَنْ يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاء. They are questioning God, saying, are you putting on earth a being that is going to corrupt the earth and to spread bloodshed? This is the question of the angels. So what if the angel asks, the angels are asking, and we human beings, we don't, we just repeat? That's not the way. We have the right to ask. Because with your questions, you get the knowledge, and with the knowledge, you get the understanding, and with the understanding, you get the deep belief in God. Belief has to do with knowledge from the very beginning. So that's the first point, which is essential. So when you say to be a Muslim means to submit or means submission, you are removing from humanity this dignity. So it's not submission, it's to enter with your mind, with your heart, in this peace with God. And peace with God is add knowledge, add understanding, and add love to everything you are doing. These are essential things. And add freedom. Use your freedom to be close to Him, not use your freedom to destroy yourself. So that's an essential point at the starting point of our discussion. Second thing. In Islam, we don't have a church. We don't have a clergy. And there is something which is essential. It's get the knowledge, come close to God, and know something which is essential. Something which is essential in your relationship. You know that when the companions of the Prophet, peace be upon him, were with him, they were questioning, they're asking, how do we talk to God? How do we express something? Are we connected to God? And you know that in some traditions, in the Christian tradition, less in the Jewish tradition, and in many structural religions, the relationship to God goes through a hierarchy. In Islam, there is nothing like this. You, as a human being, you speak directly to Him. To the point that you have in the Quran, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِ عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ. When my servant, when the believer are asking about him, this is God talking to the Prophet, peace be upon him, saying, I am close. I respond to the call of the one who calls when he or she calls. Meaning, I'm very close to you. Meaning what? Meaning that you don't need a mufti, you don't need a sheikh, you don't need anybody to talk to him. He knows about you more than anyone else, and sometimes more than yourself, about yourself. And what we have in the Quran, وَنَحْنُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْهِ مِنْ حَبْلِ الْوَرِيدِ. We are closer to him than his jugular vein. God is very close. And there is another verse saying, وَعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ يَحُولُ بَيْنَ الْمَرْءِ وَقَلْبِهِ. And know that God is between you and your heart. Very close. Between you and your heart. He is here, inside, so close to you. What does it mean? It means from the very beginning that to be a Muslim with God, you have to be autonomous. You have to be free and autonomous. You can't come to God and say, you know what, I did this because I was asked to do it by this and that. I wasn't just with him because my patron or my leader asked me to do this. You can't do that. You can't say, like Goebbels said in the time of the Nazi, I did it because Hitler told me to do so. I had no conscience. I'm just following him. No way. No way. You can't hide behind an authority telling you something wrong to do. To the point that in the Quran, even if your parents, your father and your mother are asking you to do something unjust, this is the only time you cannot obey. I can't obey if you are asking me to do something unjust. وَإِنْ جَاهَدَاكَ عَلَىٰ أَن تُشْرِكَ بِي مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٍ فَلَا تُطِعْهُمَا. If they are asking you to do something, you'd have no knowledge about the justice of it, don't do it. Don't obey. Even your father, even your mother. I don't obey. لا طاعة لمخلوق في معصية الخالق. No obedience to any creatures in disobedience in the justice of the Creator. It means that you have to have a critical mind. My father, my mother, I respect you. I'm going to do what you want me to do as long as it is right, but not if it is wrong. So if your father or your mother are telling you, you are not going to marry this man or this woman because he or she is black or he or she is poor, and say, I'm sorry. I'm going to respect you, but not if you are asking me to something to the unjust. There is no rule in Islam telling you that I cannot marry a black man or a black woman. You know why? Because racism in Islam is unacceptable. No way that you are going to tell me I cannot marry a poor man or a poor woman. You know why? Because there is no excellence in being rich in Islam. If not because I am poor, that I'm not good. And you know what? Mind you, I might be poor and better than you. That's the point it is in Islam. What does it mean? Autonomous thinking. You have to think according to principles. And to get the principles, you need to get the knowledge. But you are alone in front of God. Why? Because what you have in the Quran, وَكُلُّهُمْ آتِيهِمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ فَرْدًا. Every one of us, one day, you have to come back to God and He will ask you, what have you done with your life, with your money, and with your goods? What have you done with your time? You can't say, my father, my mother, my son, the neighbor, the leader. That's not the way it is. You should be independent and autonomous. This is also the starting point of critical thinking, that you cannot just hide behind an authority asking you to do this and that, and you say, I'm not going to criticize, I'm not going to think. Let them think. Even the sheikh, even the leader. If somebody in a mosque here is telling you do something, you have the duty to ask him or her, give me the evidence of what you are asking me to do. When a fatwa, a legal opinion, is given to you by a scholar, you have the right to accept it or not to accept it. Meaning you have to think. You need to know why I'm taking this and what I'm not taking this. You just cannot blindly follow the majority. You have to think. This is the second point. And the last point, which is also a role that we need to understand. By the way, if I have to ask you something, if you are a Muslim and if you are people of other faiths or with no faith, at one point there is a critical question. Why are you on earth? What is your role? What is your utility on earth? Are you useless? That's a good one, by the way. Because you might be useless. This is harsh. But there is one question here, which is, if you are with God, if you have a spirituality, you have two things to do wherever you are. In Moscow, as well as in Mecca, or everywhere in the world, whatever you see as unjust, you have to resist. Whatever is wrong, you have to resist. When there is racism, you have to resist. When there is discriminations towards women, you have to resist. When there are cultural features that are wrong, you have to resist. This is one thing that you have to do, resistance to what is bad. But you also have to propose new things. You have to be creative. You have a critical role to play wherever you are. You can't just be a passive human being and say, you know what, I just want you to like me, to accept me. You are not on earth to be accepted and liked. You have to propose, you have to be creative, you have to come with new ideas about more justice, more humanity, more respect towards creation, more creativity in arts and imagination. This is what is needed now. We need this. So you have to ask yourself, what is my role? As a Muslim on earth, as a Russian Muslim, what is my contribution to Russia? Because you have to be contributing to the future of this country by being positive, by being creative. To sit down in this room and say, all the Russian people don't like Islam, is not going to make it. They're just going to blame all the world and the Russian people. And at the end, what are you proposing? And not only the national football team, not only in music, not only in movies. I'm talking about citizens. I'm talking about citizenship. I'm talking about politics, about journalism, about anything. That's why we have to understand our positive contribution. And this comes with critical thinking. Having said this, and this is the long introduction, I'm coming now to raise in the first part of my talk just a few things that are necessary to understand from within the Islamic tradition. And get me right. I always have been like this. As a Muslim, I'm quite harsh with Muslims, with us. And I think that all my life, over the last 35 years, my main concern is to remain faithful with my principles, but to acknowledge the fact that I met so many people, atheists, agnostics, Christians, Jews, who are sharing values with me, and we have to work together. So it's not a call for us, internal critical thinking, us, among ourselves, for ourselves. No, it's us from within to be open to the world. Because many people, and this is the point, diversity in the world is meant as a way to know the other. وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا, where we made you nations and tribes in order for you to know each other. Diversity has as a consequence mutual knowledge. Diversity means more knowledge, not ignorance, not rejection, not blame, but knowledge. And this is something which is essential in the way we have to think about diversity. Now, if you want critical thinking, if you should be able to ask questions, there are requirements. What are the basic requirements of critical thinking? Asking questions and thinking on your own, thinking by yourself. The first is basic needs should be satisfied. And let us be clear on this. You know that the Prophet, peace be upon him, said that poverty could lead towards rejection of God. قَدْ يُؤَدِّي إِلَى الْكُفْءِ الْفَقْرِ. Poverty could lead people towards rejection of looking for the truth. And if we look at the world today, what is happening, even in Russia, but not only in Russia, in Asian countries, in African countries in the world, poverty doesn't go with critical thinking. You don't have to eat. If you don't have to eat, you cannot eat. If you don't have a house, if you are not protected, how are you going to think? The fact that you are hungry, the fact that you are starving is against human rights. So we have to repeat this, because we should not be privileged to the point that, oh, we are promoting critical thinking, but we let 2/3 of humanity today not having enough to think because they don't have enough to eat, enough to drink. That's the reality of it. That's the reality of our world. So as Muslims, as human beings with our fellow human beings, we have to start by saying, because critical thinking is a duty, basic needs are rights. Our rights, this is what we need. Our rights as human beings. We have to be clear on this. Zakat in Islam. The fact that you have to pay zakat. The fact that it's a right for the poor people means, if you want critical thinking, if you want a society promoting intelligence and knowledge and understanding and proposing and creativity, let us come with the basic needs. We have to have, instead of having a jihad as they have in Syria, in Iraq, by killing innocent people, let us have a jihad against poverty, which is what we did in Mauritius a long time ago with Christians and Chinese and Confucianists. All these people, we came together, a jihad against poverty. It's the way we don't accept poverty as something that is a state of affairs which is dignified as human beings. So the first, basic needs. The second is education. Education, we need education. And there is something which is essential here as Muslims. There is an education where I'm teaching you to repeat what I'm saying, which is unfortunately what we very often have in our mosques. In our mosques, you come and you repeat. While in our schools, even here in Russia, in the relationship with the teachers, there is questions and answers. And very often in our settings, we think that education has to do with you repeat what I'm teaching. We educate as in the way we are teaching Al-Quran. Al-Quran is to repeat, so teaching is to repeat. No. Teaching is to let you think and to give you the means to think by your own. Remember this saying of a very important French intellectual saying. Who is the best teacher? Who is the best teacher? The best teacher is not the one who is teaching you to think like him. The best teacher is the one who is helping you to think without him. That's the way it is. Think without me. Give me the means to think. And I'm adding something to what he said. The best teacher is not the one asking you to think like him, but asking you to think without him and even against him. But I'm thinking against you. I like this. I like my students when they are able to say, I don't agree with you. What you are saying is wrong, against you. So thinking in an autonomous way, this is but to have this, what do you mean? What do you need? You need space where it's possible to ask questions, to get a sense of, don't ask me to repeat, I want to understand. Don't tell me that knowledge is about repeating. Knowledge is about repeating and understanding. At the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, one of the companions, Ibn Abbas, was saying, in our time, we were learning 10 verses of the Quran, and we never went to the 10 other verses until we get the right understanding of the verses. It was not knowing them by heart, it's understanding them by your mind and through your mind. It's about understanding. So we need this. Education is essential. This is the first requirement. We need this knowledge. And there is also something that we need, as I said at the beginning, it's freedom. Freedom. And we have a very strong way of dealing with respect. Respect for us, the respect was the sheikh, or there was the imam, is I'm not going to question you. Or I'm not questioning even my parents. That's wrong. Even the people around the Prophet, peace be upon him, were questioning him. So we need to have freedom, space, where what I have in my heart, what I have in my mind, give me the space to express it. Do we have this in our organizations as Muslims? Do we have this in our settings? Very often, be careful. Don't ask the question. Just repeat. And we think that we are good Muslim if we take it and don't question it. What's that? Who taught us that the good Muslim is, I repeat and I don't ask? This is to be a stupid Muslim. There is a difference between being a good Muslim and a stupid Muslim. The stupid repeat, the good understands. Understand. That means give me the knowledge I want to understand. So why do I have to pray 5 times a day? Why do I have to fast? What is the meaning of this modesty that we are talking about? Is there only physical modesty, or is there something called intellectual modesty? What it is about humility? What is the meaning of spirituality? Don't teach me that I have to pray 5 times a day and give me the hours. Tell me, why do I have to pray? What is the very meaning of this? And let me ask the question. So this wants to go. Still okay with the translation? Good. So this is something which is important. Freedom is important, knowledge is important, and basic needs. Now let me tell you something. Many scholars, many imams and shuyukh, they think that the critical thinking, it's against our own conviction. So I'm Muslim, I'm questioning everything, so to the point that I'm going to question even my belief. And it's wrong. It's not because we have a critical thinking and we are asking questions that we don't have convictions. That we believe in God, there is one God, la ilaha illahu, the oneness of God. So it's very irrational to understand that our rationality has limits. It's not irrational. All the scientists, all the great philosophers in the world, they acknowledge the fact. Even one of the most important philosophers in the West, Kant, was saying, there is a space when you know, and there is a space where you believe. So there are limits to our knowledge. It's not irrational. It's rational. So beyond your rationality, you believe in whatever you want. And if you believe in God, and if you believe that God is sending you a revealed book telling you 5 times a day you have to pray, you fast Ramadan, you believe in some principles, that's fine. It's not because you are critically thinking that you don't have convictions or you are doubting everything. No, you have your convictions. I have my own convictions. And then I dealt with, my first PhD was on Nietzsche. Nietzsche said, God is dead. To whom God responded, Nietzsche is dead. If you know the story. But the point is that he said, and he was very powerful with his thinking, because he didn't like hypocrisy of the people who pretended to believe. And he had other views on this. But when you deal with him, it's not because he is rejecting God that you end up with your critical thinking rejecting God. The opposite is true. Because you know how to take questions and answer, you believe is stronger. Your convictions are stronger because they are based on your own thinking. You understand what you mean. So critical thinking is not about questioning everything, but it's about questioning and sometimes to acknowledge the fact that at one point you have a belief, you believe in God, and that's it. And it's a conviction that is coming with the heart. You know, it's not because you are critical thinking that you are going to question everything. It's exactly the same when you love somebody. So if you are promoting critical thinking and somebody comes to you and say, okay, I have a question to you. Why do you love him or her? You have a critical thinking. You can be a great philosopher. Yes, now explain to me, why do you love her? That's another story. Your heart has its reasons that your reason doesn't know. This is what Pascal was saying, the French philosopher. So not everything is to be submitted to your rationality. That's it. That's life. So I believe, and at the same time, I have my critical thinking. Third point, which is important here. In our tradition, we have two trends. Some scholars, and we have them here, even in Russia, you have them everywhere. Some think that in order to be a good Muslim, you have to repeat the models of the past. And this is what we call taqleed, imitation. You have some Salafi, they think in order to be a good Muslim, you have to dress the way the Muslims were dressed in the 7th century. You have some Muslims, they think in order to be a good Muslim, you have to try to find again the social organization of the past. And what we are telling them is that, you know what? You are confusing two things. The principles of the past are the principles of the present, but the models of the past are the models of the past, not of the present. We keep the principles and we find the new models for our time. Because even though you wanted to have a society organized, let's say, in economic terms, as it was organized in the 7th century, even in the neighborhood here, you cannot just implement the same thing. Because the neighborhood here, the very small neighborhood here, is more complex in economic terms than Medina in the 7th century. It's more complex. You can't do that. So it's silly. We have to keep the principles and to renew the models. Some of our brothers in Islam and sisters in Islam, they want to duplicate the models, and that's wrong. Critical thinking is keep the principles, find a new model. How do we call this? Tajdeed, renewal. You renew the reading and you keep the principles. This is why when people are coming to me and say, you know what, we have to reform Islam, I say no. Islam doesn't need reform. What we need to reform is the Muslim minds. The way we read. We have a problem in the way we read. The Quran has no problem. The reader has a problem. Okay, the readers, they have a problem. They are duplicating the models, not understanding the principle of justice is a universal trans-historical principle. How are you going to implement this here? How are you going to be just in Russia? By bringing back the Medinian model? Let's go, try. Are you going to be just in economic terms with the economic model of Medina? Go, try. Are you going to be modest in the 21st century in the way they were dressed in the 7th century, in the Arabian culture? Try. That's not the way it is. So we have to go from taqleed ila tajdeed. Tajdeed is renewal. But be careful, we are not renewing everything. It's not because of renewal that we are going to pray one time a day or fast 1 week a year. No, there are principles that are immutable. 1 month, 5 times a day, all these are immutable principles and rituals that we are keeping. Now we need to make our mind and open our mind to the world in the way we have to deal. And then there is another thing which is important. Wherever you are, as a Muslim, as a human being even, you never take the cultural setting the way it is by sacralizing the culture. You respect cultures, but no culture is to be sacralized or sacred. What does it mean? Some people coming from Saudi Arabia or coming from the Middle East, they come, for example, here in Russia and tell you, you know what? You have to come back to the true Islam. And you look at them and say, what do you mean? So the true Islam is our Islam. What do you mean? The true Islam is the Arabian Islam. Is dressed like Arabs, speak the Arabic language, and deal with the world, thank you, deal with the world as Arabs deal. And say, okay, hold on. I have a question. Are you telling me that the Arabs today are all good Muslims? Are you telling me that what is happening in Saudi Arabia, it's good? Are you telling me that surrounding Al-Haram, that you have these malls, that you have all this money, all this consumer society, where you buy and you buy and you buy 100 meters from Al-Haram, is this the right Islam you are talking about? Tell me, is the right Islam is to behave like the kings over there? Is this the Islam that you are talking about? Or is there something that we have to be clear about it? Is the good Islam to prevent women from driving and to be very happy because the new king is changing? Is this Islam? Or is there something wrong in your culture? That in fact, the Islamic principles are even betrayed by Arabs themselves. It's not a question of culture, it's a question of principles. So we have to be clear about this. In fact, Islam came with principles in order to liberate ourselves from cultural imposition. There are many things in the Arab cultures that are against Islam. And mind you, there are many things in the Russian culture that are more Islamic than the Arab cultures. Get that? In Russia, when you have a meeting, you have to start on time, isn't it? Yes or no? I hope so. No? Okay, so they are like the Arabs. In my country, in Switzerland, 7 is 7. That's Islamic. In Saudi Arabia or in Egypt, the country I'm coming from, at 7 means 9. That's not Islamic. That's Egyptian. We have to be critical towards every single culture. In the name of our principles, we take from the culture what is good and we reform what is bad. In every single culture. And let me put it that way. The language of the Quran is Arabic, but the culture of Muslims is not the Arabic culture. Islam is a universal religion taking from all the cultures, and we don't have a problem with any culture. So there is nothing wrong to be a Muslim and a Russian by culture. Nothing. The opposite. Take what is good. Promote what is good. Don't try to Arabize yourself in Russia. To be a Muslim Arabized Russian. It's wrong. Don't try to imitate them. Try to reform and take the good, in order for the Russian culture to come back to Saudi Arabia. Not to come back, but to go and to promote what is good from wherever we are at the periphery. So what I mean by this is that our religion is telling us, be critical even with your culture. Everything which is, it's not because you speak Arabic that you are a good Muslim. It's not because you are Arabic by culture that you are a good Muslim. And it's not because you are Russian with your culture that you are a bad Muslim. That's a very, very wrong understanding of our religion. So we have to promote this. Having said that, let me go straight to the second part and my conclusion. Now, having this in mind, you understand our responsibility. It means that we have to make our mind, get knowledge, get understanding, ask questions, be autonomous, be free to promote, to resist and to promote wherever we are. We have to be active. We have to promote. This is the critical thinking in the East or in the West, wherever we are. But it means also that we also have to be critical with the dominant culture today, which is telling you, you know what? Freedom is to be free to consume. In the consumer society, freedom is about having, buying, and buying again. If you have a spiritual life, you will see, and this is clear, that you will find exactly the same with many atheists, many agnostics, many Jews, many Christians, that we agree on this. Freedom is not about buying. Freedom is not about having. Freedom is about being somebody, being free. Liberate yourself from the consumer society. So this is where we have to be critical by also looking at the dominant culture, what is coming from the West, what is coming from the American culture, telling you, you know what? Your freedom is to buy. Your freedom is to think the way the majority think. You have to be free the way we are free. If not, you are conservative. I don't have a problem being a conservative if progress is to think like Trump. If Trump is the future, I prefer to be the past. Okay, if this is the way, I'm not going to accept this. Resistance to the dominant culture telling us buy and have and be through your pleasure and entertainment, that's not the way it should be. It's not the way, this is not dignified. We are numbers. We are not respected as citizens and human beings. So what is our spirituality doing with us? What is your faith doing with us? What is also a resistance to destroying the world in order to make money. To make money, we are ready to destroy the creation. And this is why now we have environmental issues about global warming and everything. As Muslims, as human beings, we have to stand up and to say, not in our name. We cannot accept to destroy nature and to destroy the world only for the sake of money. We cannot accept that dominant economy are selling weapons and speaking about peace while they are selling weapons to people to kill one another, which is what is happening now in the Middle East. They are selling weapons, you know, in some discussion that we have in the UK or we have in France, or even wherever we are, even here in Russia, the problem is, to whom are you selling weapons? And why are you selling weapons? To make money, and you let the people, the bloodshed everywhere, as long as it's not us? The many people are so happy with Mohammed bin Salman because he's leaving women driving cars. Don't we know what is happening in Yemen? That he was behind what is happening in Yemen, killing millions of people, starving today in Yemen, hundreds of thousands, and now the people are in the region. What's that? What's that? In our name? No. We have to stand up. We have to be critical here and to say, no, our spirituality, our understanding is resisting the dominant consumer culture and also this culture of making money out of everything. Kill one another. Go and kill one another. And we are selling weapons for you to kill one another, and we are making money. This is what is happening, and this is impossible also. So the last thing that I wanted to say about this in our world is also, when you are in a country, to think critically is to have something which I call critical loyalty. You need to want the best for Russia. You need to want you want the best for any country you live in. If you are in any country, try to promote the best for the country as citizen. But at one point you also have to have a critical thinking. And critical thinking is critical loyalty. If your government is doing right, you promote it. But when your government is doing wrong, you are critical. And you know what this means? There is no critical thinking without courage. Critical thinking is, I speak my mind. So when, for example, your own government is doing things in your name that are not right, should be courageous enough to say, no, I don't agree with this. Because I want the best for my country, I don't agree with the government doing the worst. Wherever you are, critical thinking means be courageous. Speak your mind. To the point that the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, you know what is afdalul jihad, the best jihad on earth? What is the best jihad? Is to go and to kill innocent people, as they are doing in Syria and Iraq? Is Boko Haram killing women and killing poor people? Is this the best jihad? This is betraying jihad. This is betraying everything in Islam. These people are betraying our principles. What is then the best jihad? It's not to look at the poor and the woman and to kill them. It's to look at the dictator. The best jihad is a word of truth in front of a dictator. That's what the Prophet said, peace be upon him. The best jihad is courage. Stand up. Don't kill. Stand up and speak the truth. Where are you in this? Because many of you are very happy, you are smiling, that's good, go ahead, speak. But sometimes you have to pay the price. You know, I have been banned from 9 Muslim majority countries. 9. And I have been banned from the States, and I have been under Bush, which is an honor. To be banned in the United States by the Bush administration, you should feel good, because you know Bush. But some countries today are also doing things that we have to be critical towards, and it needs courage. That's also something that we need. My conclusion here, it's also connected to something, you know, I'm writing a book now called A Manifesto for an Islamic Liberation Theology, calling the Muslims to stand up and to understand that liberation theology, Islam is all about liberating yourself. Liberating your heart, this is spirituality. Liberating your mind, this is critical thinking. Liberating your status within the society needs freedom. It means freedom and to be free and to resist cultural imposition, economic imposition, cultural imposition. It's all about liberating ourselves. And we need this. Today we need Muslims, men and women, to come and to say we have to liberate ourselves, for example, from this very macho and understanding of Islam, which has to do with patriarchal interpretation of Islam. Nothing prevents men and women to be equal before God and within the society. Quite the opposite. المؤمنون والمؤمنات بعضهم أولياء بعض. Men and women are allies within the society. يأمرون بالمعروف وينهون عن المنكر. They promote what is right and they resist what is wrong. Both men and women. This is what they do in society. So this is why we have to come with this critical thinking. What is it with us? What's wrong with us to have mosques where there is no room for women, no space for women, no space for women to be involved? And we are changing our mosque into male spaces. Who told you to do that? Who told us? Who taught us to do this? This is not Islam. This is a male interpretation of Islam. Islam is about men and women together. And in the name of Islam, to be clear with our principles and to be clear with our goals. So there is something that is a liberation process that we need, respecting the principles, understanding our world, and promoting and proposing new ways of thinking. So this is an imperative. We need this. It's imperative. This critical thinking, it's consubstantial to the Islamic teaching. You have to be critical and remember that the power of the Prophet, peace be upon him, is all his companions were very critical. And the wives around him, the women. Even, you remember the story in Medina that once, Umar ibn al-Khattab was very strong. He liked the Meccan culture. And the Meccan culture was for the men, I speak, you listen. This was the Meccan culture as to women. I speak, I'm the male, and you listen. He went to Medina, and once his wife responded back. I said, what's that? I said, go and ask your daughter. This is the way she is with the Prophet, peace be upon him. I said, what? Because his daughter was responding back to the Prophet, peace be upon him. She was communicating. You say, I listen, and I have something to say. So he was shocked. Because Islam was the principle of communication with men and women between them. The Meccan culture was not the culture of Islam, it was the Meccan culture. Islam was about freeing women. And this was the way. So now, sometimes in our setting now, we are coming back to the Meccan culture. Let us come back to the Medinian culture, where the women have a voice. They were involved in every setting within the society. So I would say critical thinking is an imperative. Critical thinking is to think, not to repeat in a creative way. And I would say critical thinking has to do with courage to resist and to propose. My last question to you here in this room, you came to listen. What is your force of proposal within your society? If now you ask any of your fellow Russian citizens, what do you think the Muslims are bringing to the society today? What is their contribution? What do you think would be the answer? If there is no answer, it's the problem. If we are looking for an answer, that's good. But anyway, there should be something essential here. It's we need free Russian men and women, Muslims, understanding that their contribution to their society is to promote critical thinking, not against the society, but with the society. And they have fellow citizens who are ready to do it. You have lots of fellow citizens in this country who are ready to be with you in this struggle for a better Russian future. Thank you.